Hello, 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 and welcome. Welcome to today's masterclass, Why Punishments Don't Work and What to Do Instead. My name is Lisa Smith, and I'm the Peaceful Parent, and I want to welcome you here today and tell you how excited I am that we're going to be together and that I get the opportunity to share with you some thoughts, some ideas, some tools, and some solutions. I'm really, really, really excited to teach this class today. And I just know that we're going to have a great time together. So let's get started. Let me begin by saying that you're in the right place if you're looking to stop reacting to misbehaviors and start focusing on the real problem with your kids. And you're in the right place if you want your kids to cooperate with you, if you're looking for solutions and opportunities and ways and tools to help your kids cooperate. And you're in the right place if you want to feel heard by your children without yelling or threatening. I know that would be great, wouldn't it? And you're in the right place if you want to feel calm and confident while parenting, even when your kids are not. So let's dig in and get started. And let me say that in order to gain the maximum benefit out of our time together, I ask you to minimize distractions. Really come, focus, be present with me here today. This is a gift that you're giving yourself. This is an investment of your time. This is definitely something your family needs, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be investing this time today. So what I really want to do is invite you to get rid of or minimize all the distractions and come and be fully present with me here today. And let me say that if you're a parent who's serious about getting better results in your family without yelling, screaming, punishing, threatening, the next hour or so together could be life-changing for you and your family. And again, I just want to say that I'm honored and that I'm thrilled that you're here taking this time to participate in this masterclass today. So I also want to share with you that, I'm investing my time here today, and I'm really passionate about my mission to help serve families around the world, to help them find deep connection and peace in the home. And so my commitment to you is that over the next hour together, I'm going to teach you as much as I can, but we do have limited time together. And what I want you to know is that at the end of the workshop, at the end of our masterclass today, I'm going to show you how we can take this work further and deeper and do some work together, you and I, live in person. And I'm going to share the way that we can do that at the end of our masterclass today. Sound good? Awesome. And if you stay till the end of this masterclass, I have an amazing bonus for you that I'm really excited about sharing with everybody that's joining us today. So please feel free to stay till the end. Okay, a little bit about me for those that don't know me. I really want to take a few minutes here and introduce myself, and more importantly, tell you why I'm qualified to speak about this topic of why punishments don't work and what to do instead. As I mentioned, I am a mom to a 14-year-old, very, very, very strong-willed child. I'm also a master certified parent coach who knows the joy of transformation. But really what I do is I help turn frustrated parents who regularly default to yelling, fighting, threatening, punishing, and playing the battle of wills games into peaceful leaders within their households. As a former dominant parent myself, I found the path to peaceful parenting, and I'm dedicated and passionate about helping other parents find their way too. When I'm not coaching, you'll most likely find me at a basketball game cheering for my son or traveling somewhere new. I'm obsessed with CrossFit, personal development, reading novels, and Starbucks ice cream teas. And I had this whole life before I got into parent coaching. Prior to becoming a parent coach, I was an executive in a Fortune 500 company, and I co-founded a venture capital firm, which I successfully ran for a few years. And back then, I like to say that professionally, I was on top of my game. But as a parent, I felt like I was failing. I can remember one day when Malcolm was about 6 years old. That's him in both of these pictures, but he was about 6 in the bottom picture there. And I remember the day so absolutely vividly, like it was yesterday. I was furious with him on one particular day. It was over homework or showering or something. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember. But it doesn't matter because unfortunately, this was a pretty regular occurrence in our house. So on this particular day, I was yelling at Malcolm and he was screaming back at me in a throat to throat battle. I'm talking, we were having a full blown screaming match. And I was so furious with him for yelling at me. And then it hit me. I had this aha moment. If he's doing this now, where are we going to be in 5, 10, or 20 years? And I also realized that I was responsible. I was teaching him to be angry and to be reactive with his anger, and he was only 6. Back then, I was angry and frustrated a lot. The joys of parenting for me were far and few between. And on top of it, I had a tremendous amount of guilt and shame over how I was parenting. When I looked around in my world, everyone else seemed to be doing it right, and I couldn't figure out how to get there. I had no tools in my toolbox. I had no idea what I was doing, and I had few good role models growing up. And I was what I would honestly call a pretty hot mess at the time. So I decided in that moment that something had to change. I'm pretty good at doing research. I'm pretty good at seeking solutions to problems. So I decided on that day to set out. I was determined. I decided to set out and find a new way. And I knew there had to be a different way to parent that felt more like connection and love and less like dominance and reaction. And as the universe usually works, the solution fell right into my lap. A friend of mine was doing an interview about a new way of parenting known as conscious parenting with someone called a parent coach. I listened in the hopes of learning anything new, of learning something that would help, and sure enough, I found it. I learned that day about empathy and connection, about valuing the relationship and the person over the behavior of the moment. I was hooked from the very beginning. And I immediately became a student of conscious parenting, absorbing every piece of information I could get my hands on. And I have to tell you, the impact for me, for my son, for my husband, really for our whole family was immediate. Within the first week, I felt the change. I could see the path to peaceful parenting. And I knew the connection that I really craved with my son was right within my grasp. I felt this calmness and this confidence come over me that I hadn't felt since becoming a parent. And I discovered empathy and how to apply it first to myself and then to my son. I discovered a new way of thinking and approaching the challenges ahead of us. I learned techniques to take us away from reactionary confrontation and take us towards problem-solving solutions. And I share all of this with you because I really want you to know that I'm 100% real with you about my own path from dominance to peaceful parenting. And I want you to know wherever you are, I've been there. I have zero judgment for anyone who comes to me and tells me what's really going on at their house and how they yelled at their kid or lost their temper or just feel like a big parenting fail. And I wonder, can you recognize some of yourself and some of the things going on in your home in my story? I'm sure you can, or again, you wouldn't be here today. And so, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's great, Lisa. That worked for you, but how do I know it'll work for me? Well, let me share some facts with you. I've worked with moms one-on-one. I've worked with moms in groups, moms and dads, divorced parents, co-parenting, grandparents, single moms, single dads, foster parents, blended families, 2 mom families and 2 dad families. And what I do know is that we all have a couple things in common. One is we all love our kids with a passion. 2, we know we're doing the best we can, and yet most of us know we could be doing a little bit better. And again, I assume that's why you're here today, investing this time in listening and participating in this masterclass so you can come away with some tips on how to do it just a little bit better. And I believe that all parents that want to do better can. I also know that we all want deep connection with our kids and peace in our home. So I'm going to be sharing some stories with you today as we go through this masterclass. And what I want you to know is that listening to stories is a great way for your brain to learn, for any of our brains. We really learn through storytelling. That's why it's stayed around for hundreds of thousands of years. It allows the lesson to really sink in and create a visual for you. So I'll be sharing many of my own stories with you, examples from working with clients, practical suggestions that you can implement immediately, and testimonials from past and current clients as we work through this masterclass today. I also want you to know that all testimonials from previous clients are shared with love and full permission from the client. As we begin to work through the material, I really want to set the stage today with a couple important concepts. And let me start. I asked you at the beginning to get out a pen and paper. So let me ask you, let's take a pause here, and let me get you to think about your family and your goals and your situation and really what you want for you and your family. So let me just take a pause for a second and ask you to write down one goal that you want to come away from today's masterclass with. What's one thing that you'd really like to work on with regard to your family? What's one tool you'd really like to implement? Okay, now let me ask you a different question. How do you feel about mistakes? How do you feel when your kids make a mistake? What is your reaction? What is your philosophy? What is your reaction when your kids make a mistake? Do you tend to get frustrated with them? Do you expect that they know the right way to do things? Do you understand it's part of the growing and learning process? Or do you tend to get angry and frustrated when they make a mistake? Well, what I came to learn that really helped me a lot within my own family is that your kids are going to make a lot of mistakes. And sometimes, unfortunately, they make big ones. It's just part of the growing and learning process. Our kids have underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, the decision making, the empathy, the rationale, the critical thinking portion of their brain. And research suggests that their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until around the age of 25. So their childhood is really an opportunity to make a lot of mistakes and to grow and learn from these mistakes. And we really are there to be their emotional coaches. Again, this was a big aha moment for me when I realized that I could make the choice to transition from being a disciplinarian to being my kid's emotional coach. That I could really help him, basically, I could help him train his brain and help him work his values rather than constantly be disciplining him, shaming him, getting on him, getting angry with him when he makes a mistake. So I found this quote a couple years ago, and it's "Conflict is growth trying to happen." And it's become really a favorite quote of mine, especially when it pertains to parenting. I didn't think about mistakes and conflict like this in the past. I thought conflict was meant to be avoided. And when it showed up in my parenting, I either wanted to hide my head or explode with anger. I saw it as a sign that I was failing at parenting and my kid wasn't listening. I think I sort of expected, interacting with my kid to be rainbows and unicorns. And when a mistake came along, it would really throw me off of my game and create a lot of anger and frustration inside me. So I like to say to myself all the time, conflict is growth trying to happen. And when my son makes a mistake, I try to remind myself that this is an opportunity for me to guide him while he's growing through the mistake and really train his brain and learn. And it's really helped me reframe how I see mistakes happen for him. And it really helps me stay calm and collected as I'm really helping him through some of his mistakes. I also want to share with you that when our kids live at home, again, I like to think of their childhood as a dress rehearsal or dry run for adulting. So another thing to keep in mind is that we want them to make big mistakes at home. Well, maybe not big, but we want them to make mistakes because then we can guide them. We can usher them. We can be their emotional coach and we can help them. When they make mistakes, we can also help them learn how to recover from the mistake, how to take responsibility, how to get back on track, how to come up with a new plan, how to course correct, and how to avoid future mistakes. And these are all skills that are really important to have so that when they become an adult and get out on their own, they have some experience and they have some idea, and we've been able to guide them while their brain is developing when they're making mistakes. I like to say the mistakes and the conversations around them really help our kids understand repair and recovery. And also they help them learn that mistakes are a natural part of being human. So let me ask you now, look back at the answer you wrote down when I asked you how you feel about mistakes. And my question to you now is, does that shift it a little bit for you? Do you see that, you know, sometimes we are going to have to ask our kids night after night after night to brush their teeth? They have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. Or when your two boys are fighting and it escalates out of control and they get really wound up about it, that you can calmly work with them to find a new way to resolve that conflict rather than you yourself getting angry and frustrated, and really work on being their emotional coach and guide them through the conflict so that their brains can learn a better way to deal with it or to develop the emotional intelligence around mistakes. So I'm really passionate about this, and I really love talking about this. And I wanted to, I don't feel like we can really talk about discipline and an alternative to discipline until we really understand that at the front end of it, the discipline is usually because, or almost always because, there's been a mistake. And really framing the mistake in a new way that helps us see it really is helpful. And it takes us into the first lesson that we're going to talk about today, which is why punishments don't work. And again, I want to ask you, put pen to paper and tell me, how do you feel about punishments? What is your philosophy about punishment? And where do you think it came from? If you do punish your kids, why? Do you think it's something that you just assume works? Is it something that was handed down? Were you punished? Are you punishing in the same way that your parents punished you or your caretaker punished you? Is it the only option you think you have? I want to just pause here for a moment and let you really think about, what is your philosophy and what is the origin of it? Okay, so what I want to share with you first is why punishments don't work for the child. So punishments don't work for the child because they're often after the fact. And the child has a hard time understanding the relationship of the punishment to the crime, if you will. And punishments also don't work for the child because kids feel shame and humiliation when they're being punished. I mean, you can just look at this picture here. The mom is screaming at the kid through a megaphone, and you can just see the kid is starting to shut down. He feels bad. I think this is such a great picture. When most of us have done something wrong and we're being called out on it in a very loud, dramatic, punishing or dominant type of way, we as human beings often feel shame and humiliation. And what we do know is that it's impossible for kids to learn, humans in general, but kids to learn when they feel shame and humiliation. And so that's one of the reasons punishments don't work for the kids. The other reason is that while we're punishing our children, they're having a fight or flight stress response, and they're pumping a hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is that really agitating feeling that we all get in our bodies when we feel panicked or we feel shame or we feel like our entire internal system is going haywire. And research shows that when humans are pumping cortisol in our bodies, that it blocks our hearing. So the other problem with punishments is your kid is feeling shame and humiliation, and then she's secreting cortisol, and now she can't hear you, and she really can't learn the lesson. And so it's really, really, really hard for our children to learn when they've got all this going on internally within their system, when they're being disciplined versus being emotionally coached or trained on a better way to do something. And it's really hard for their brains to create new neural pathways when they're having this entire fight or flight response going on within their bodies. And the other thing that happens is when we're punishing our children, they often get sidetracked on the punishment, particularly if they're a strong-willed child. I know this is 100% the case with my strong-willed boy. They often get sidetracked on the punishment, and they miss the original message or lesson that you're trying to teach in the first place. And this happens because they often get really angry about the punishment, and they feel things like it's unfair, and it starts to lead to a power struggle within their mind. They start to focus on the punishment, and they forget the original crime that led to the punishment. And then it sets them up to create a power struggle that often leads to further acting out on the child's part. So, again, punishments really don't work for the child, and they don't net the result. In most instances, they don't net the result that you're often trying to get. And if they do, it's with a whole big old can of shame and humiliation going on. And I want to also share with you, the punishments don't work for the parents either. How do you feel, if you've had an intense situation with your child, be it a small kid or a teenager, where you've really kind of lost control and had this huge screaming match or this big outburst on your part of yelling at your kid, followed by taking something away from them or punishing them or really going at them in a way. My question to you is, how do you feel afterwards? Oftentimes when I ask this question of parents, I hear things like out of control, unsatisfied, the parent feels guilty, the parent realizes they went too far. Sometimes you're punishing yourself and the child by creating a punishment that doesn't really fit the crime or that is a little extreme. So where do you fall on that spectrum? Again, no judgment from me. This is just a chance for you to really take a moment and think about, what's it like for you when you're punishing your kids? So one of the reasons that punishments don't work for the parent is because when we punish our child, we're often trying to impose our will on them, or we're actually trying to dominate them. And the origin of imposing our will or dominating them is always coming from a place of fear and anger. We're either afraid of something they're going to do or something they did, and we future focus and become afraid of something they're going to do in the future. What is this going to lead to? Who are they going to be? Or we're angry. We can get angry because they went behind our back, or they did something we told them not to, or we told them to do something and we're in the other room thinking they got it done and they didn't. And so, punishing our kids coming from a place of dominance, the origin of that is always fear and anger. And it's very, very, very hard to stay in control, to feel calm and confident when at the same time you feel fear and anger and out of control. And I realize that a lot of times the feeling of anger or fear that leads to out of control can come because we get surprised. So a lot of times when we get surprised, that also leads to unpleasant feelings within us and can lead to a feeling of fight or flight. And so then we start to feel very out of control. Also, when we're angry, we tend to focus on the punishment rather than the lesson. So again, here we are, our child has done something that we didn't like or that they aren't supposed to be doing. And it could even be something really awful. They did something they should not be doing. And we put the entire conversation, we're feeling angry or afraid and out of control. We're in fight or flight, and we're starting to focus completely on the punishment and what we're taking away from them and how we want to dominate over them, rather than focusing on the lesson. And the real opportunity to train the child's brain, the real opportunity to have them absorb what you're trying to teach them, happens when they're not in fight or flight and you're not in fight or flight, and you're really focusing the conversation on the crime, the wrongdoing, the lesson, rather than the punishment. And lastly, the reason that punishments don't work for the parent is because oftentimes, again, if we're surprised and we're feeling out of control and we are coming from a place of fear and anger, that leads to not only delivering a punishment, but often delivering a punishment in a very dominant way. And the problem with that is that we're often modeling the exact behavior. Sometimes it's violence, or sometimes trying to shame our children, we're modeling the exact behavior we don't want them to have. And an example might be, you know, let's say you have 3 kids and they're all acting very rambunctious. It's been a long day. Everybody's tired. You go in the other room to maybe start dinner or fold some laundry or take a few minutes out for some self-care, and they all start fighting, and your youngest kid comes running in the bedroom to tell you that the middle child hit him, and you get really angry by this. He's crying. You're going to have to go out and moderate yet another argument between your children. So you go marching out into the family room where they're all hanging out. The older 2 kids are trying to, be seen and not heard. They're like slouched down on the couch on their Xbox, trying to pretend like nothing's wrong. You have your sad little smallest child walking behind you, still sniffling. And as you're walking to that family room, you're building up a head of steam. And you walk in, you throw open the door, and you're like, what is going on in here? And everybody starts talking at once and blaming everybody, and it's building inside of you, and then you explode. And all of a sudden you're screaming at all your kids, and you're grabbing their iPads and telling them, that's it, we're done for the night. We're not gonna have any more iPad time. So you're not even actually sure what happened between all of them. You just know that you're in there modeling dominance for these kids, which is the exact behavior you want them to stop modeling for each other. And sometimes when we're being very dominant with our children, to them it feels like we're trying to control them. And you can especially see this in this picture here on the screen. The dad looks like he's trying to dominate. He's leaning over the kid. Kid has his hands on, and the mom certainly looks angry. I mean, if that is not the look of an angry mother, I don't know what is. The problem is sometimes when our kids feel like we're trying to control them, their go-to, especially strong-willed kids, is to say no. And the desire to cooperate goes down by the minute. So now we create this massive standoff between everybody in the family in which nobody wins when that happens, I promise you. If you remember, I said I was going to share lots of stories to illustrate points. So let's dig into our first case study here that really, I think, does a nice job of illustrating a family moving away from punishing their children and into a new way of peaceful parenting. Robin is a mom who listened to what I have to teach parents about setting limits instead of yelling and butting heads. She has 2 young boys, and when we started working together, everything felt out of control in her house. And she and her husband thought punishing their boys was the only way to gain the control they were looking for. So one day after we had done our work together, Robin wrote this on her Facebook page. Here's what I know now. I look at consequences so differently. We seem to think that a bad behavior should be followed by a harsh consequence. Like you hit your brother, so you're going to your room. Sounds good, right? Not for my family. That actually breaks my heart to even think about. There is a limit we set for this behavior. 24 hours of no electronics. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you hit your brother, no electronics for 24 hours. There's no time out by themselves. They actually get more of my attention because there are no electronics, but the other boy does get his electronics. So for example, one day Ryan hit Cole. So he had no electronics for 24 hours and we had to do something. So we played baseball outside last night. And guess who came outside too? Cole. Lots of love and connection with no fighting and no time out in any one room. Just one as a family that included an easy morning routine with no problems. I seldom thought I would see the fruits of my undying labor. So I commented on her post. I said, I'm so proud of you, Robin, and your Peaceful Parent Awakening. That I commented that I was really celebrating her efforts. And then she commented back, I owe this post to you, Lisa. Without your wisdom and guidance, it wouldn't be my reality. And I'm forever grateful. Powerful, right? Imagine if this was your post or your email to me. What would it feel like to have this transformation with your kids? What would it feel like to no longer rely or need or use punishments to try to dominate over your children? I want to just pause here for a moment and invite you to let that play out in your mind. Great. Okay, if you can start to see why punishments don't work, why they've never worked for you even, then what? Well, the first thing you need to do is start to become an emotional detective. And by that, I mean going underneath the behavior to the unmet needs. This might be the most profound lesson I teach you during our time together. And here is one of the most important things I need you to know, so I hope that you're going to write this down. All kids at all times are just trying to get their needs met. Let me repeat that. All kids at all times are just trying to get their needs met. In fact, all human beings at all times are just trying to get their needs met. But for the sake of this, we'll focus on kids. An example is you wouldn't be here right now investing your time in this masterclass if you didn't have a need that you were trying to get met. So pretty much with everything we do in life, we're trying to get our needs met, and kids are no different. So to stop the yelling, threatening, fighting, punishing, or battle of wills in your house, you have to grasp and implement this concept. Because when you realize that all kids are just trying to get their needs met at all times, what happens is you accept the invitation to get curious, not furious. A lot of times as parents, we focus on what's happening at the behavioral level. And that's sort of the upper surface, if you will, focusing on the behavior. But if we realize that all kids at all times are just trying to get their needs met, we can go underneath the behavior to the feelings and unmet needs. And this is where the deep connection happens, when we go underneath the behavior to the unmet needs. So how do we figure out your kids' feelings and needs? Well, we accept the invitation to get curious, not furious. And that leads us to begin to play detective. That invites us to drop the judgment, and that invites us to really ask ourselves out loud, I wonder what my kid is feeling or needing. When we're staying at the surface level, our brain subconsciously invites a lot of judgment for our kids. He's doing this. She's being bad. He's being manipulative. She's trying to get her way. She's trying to get out of it. She's lazy. He's being deceiving. And we judge their behavior. And that puts us in fight or flight. And oftentimes it puts our kids in fight or flight. But if we can just tell ourselves, number one, all kids at all times are just trying to get their needs met, that helps to calm us down. We can take a deep breath around that mantra. And then we can say, let me get curious, not furious. Instead of staying at the top of the behavioral, at the top of the iceberg, let me go down underneath and find out what my kid's needing or what they're feeling. And it really allows us to look past the behavior down to the feelings and needs. And when we go down to the feelings and needs and we problem solve at that level, permanent change happens. We start training the brain. They aren't feeling shame and humiliation. They're starting to feel heard. They stay out of fight or flight. We stay out of fight or flight. We can communicate. We can have a conversation. We can hear each other. And real change can begin to happen at that level. So again, I want you to take away from this to look past the behavior to the feelings and needs and wonder, I wonder what my kid needs, or ask them, what are you needing? What are you feeling? And I promise you, if you do this long enough, repeatedly, and you're consistent, eventually when you ask your kids, what do they need? They will be able to tell you. They will be able to articulate it. And over time, they'll be able to meet their own feelings and needs. So what I want you to do is write this down. Put this in the notes section of your phone. Put it in your alarm of your phone and label it Get Curious, Not Furious, and turn it on to go off at 5:30, right when you're getting home from work and your kids typically have the bewitching hour, or whatever stressful time that is for you during the day. have an alarm pop up to remind you to get curious, not furious. And I want you to memorize it, chant it, repeat it, and use it, because what's meant to happen here is the get curious, not furious. It's almost like I want my voice to get inside of your head and remind you to get curious, not furious. When we do that, I just want to review this one more time. When we get curious, not furious, it's reminding us to go underneath the behavior, to the unmet feelings and needs, to drop the judgment, and to ask ourselves, what is my child needing right now? What is he feeling? And if you don't know, become the detective and figure it out. Ask them if they're old enough. Teach them, work with them to figure out what they need. It might be they're having a meltdown in the middle of Target at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And you might realize, if we stay up on the behavior, we might be tempted to judge them. They're just being difficult. They don't want to be here. They want a toy. It might turn out that what's going on underneath is they've been sitting too long, or they're tired, or they're hungry, or they're sort of done with not engaging in active play. And so you could help them meet their needs by grabbing a snack off the shelf, or letting them out of the cart and be your helper of grabbing things off the shelf. Or sometimes you got to just ditch the cart in Target and get in the car and go home and try again the next day. If you have kids that are fighting all the time, you could really try to work with them. Instead of focusing on the fighting behavior, go underneath and find out when they're fighting, what's happening, what need is not being met, what are they feeling from each other, what are they needing. I was talking to a client recently who has 2 kids, and she asked her oldest son to do something, and he told her no. He's a strong-willed kid, and I think she asked him to put the dishes away, and he looked at her and said, no, I'm not going to do that. And so she got super frustrated and left the room. And when she left the room, her younger son, who's the peacekeeper, decided that he would put the dishes away because he didn't want his mom and brother to be fighting. He didn't want his mom to be unhappy, and he didn't mind doing it. So he just decided, heck, I'll just put the dishes away and keep the peace. Well, then the older son got into an argument and hit the younger son and sort of started to wail on him and get really aggressive with him. And the mom took a moment to get curious, not furious. And she sat both of them down and really tried to understand what was going on. And what came out of the conversation is that the older son was actually going to do the dishes. He just said no in the heat of the moment. This happens sometimes with strong-willed kids, and then we need to give them some space. And he's frustrated that his brother swoops in and takes over his chores, and that he didn't have a minute to even gather himself and get the chores started. He articulated it a little bit differently, but that's the bottom line. So the mom was able to have a talk with both of the kids. She was able to talk to the older son that when he says no, everybody in the room thinks he means no. And she also agreed to give him a little space to make the request of putting the dishes away and just let him sit with it for a little bit. I also suggested she not ask him yes/no questions, which we'll get into here in a minute. And then the younger son, she sat him down and said, hey, I really appreciate your help, and I know you're coming from a good place, but your brother when I ask him to do a chore, he needs to work it out for himself. So thank you so much. But, we need to give him some space too. So she was able to sort of create a container for everybody to get their needs met. And by the way, she was also really able to hear the younger boy express how when he watches the mom and son get into a fight, how it really bothers him. And so she was able to acknowledge that as well, and really let her younger son feel heard. Okay, on to our second case study of the class. This one, we're going to talk about Tiffany and Noah. And this is an excellent example of going underneath the behavior to the unmet feelings and needs. So Tiffany is a recent client with an 8-year-old strong-willed child. Tiffany and her husband are not on the same page, and that has created a lot of tension in their home and in their marriage. Tiffany often feels stressed when she's late for things, and when she's stressed, she trends towards dominant parenting, which she admits never feels good. Here's an example of an email I received from her a couple weeks ago. She wrote, Lisa, I had a great learning moment today with Noah that I can't wait to share with you. I picked him up at school. He was aggressive, bossy, and crabby. He threw his backpack at me and ran off to the car. Let me tell you, Lisa, I was not about to pick that backpack up. I marched all the way back to the car and told him it was his responsibility to get his backpack and bring it to the car. He wasn't being very nice. I had the car running and it looked like it was going to start raining any minute. And I told him that we were not going to get a new backpack if he leaves it out and it gets ruined. Tiffany said she started getting all worked up and she started thinking, wow, Noah is being a big giant brat today. And then I remembered your voice inside of my head telling me to get curious, not furious. So I got in the car, I took a deep breath, I shifted, and I said, hey, Noah, you seem frustrated. What are you feeling? What's going on, buddy? He immediately started crying and said no one wanted to play tag with him at recess today, so he played all alone. He didn't want to play hide and seek like the rest of the kids. He said he wanted to play tag and no one would listen to him or do what he wanted to do. So Tiffany said she responded, oh, bummer, man. So you felt left out and alone? He said yes. So we talked for about a minute and I really listened to him. I really heard what he had to say. And then I said, let's walk back and get your backpack together. And on the walk, we talked about how I feel left out sometimes too and frustrated. And I gave him an example of how I feel frustrated when he doesn't listen to me at shower time. And he kind of laughed. I'm anxious to see what happens at shower tonight. But let me tell you, Lisa, we connected and it felt great. The beginning of this story is one I think we can all relate to at some point in our parenting, right? Have you had an outcome like Tiffany? So let me ask you, what would it feel like for you to connect with your daughter or son by really hearing what is going on for them underneath something like the thrown book bag? I think Tiffany did an excellent job of overlooking the book bag and going underneath to really discover what was going on for Noah. And he felt left out and unheard. And what do you think it would be like for you? What do you think it would be like for your child to feel heard and understood? Magic, right? Okay, not really magic, but a good mantra of getting curious, not furious. Okay, so if you can start to see why punishments don't work, why they've never worked for you, then what? Well, now I want to take you to the solution, which is setting limits that peacefully stick. Setting limits is a process of supporting and teaching your child while being clear with the request and letting your child know the limits. So I like to think about this as boundaries versus punishments. So what I want you to do is set the limit and stick with them in a peaceful way that sets rules and boundaries up front for your child. Said another way, punishing is using your power over your child, and setting limits is using your power with your child. Setting limits ahead of time reduces stress for you and keeps you out of that fight or flight pattern. And setting limits ahead of time reduces stress for your child because they can hear you and they can understand the family value that you want to teach them. Setting limits gives a voice to your child and allows his feelings and needs to be heard. I like to say it's the beginning of the conversation rather than the end of the conversation. And setting limits invites regulation for both of you. Okay, so how do we set limits that peacefully stick? Well, it's really a three-step process. Step one is to set the rules. I strongly advise the fewer the better, and the more clear you can be with the rules, the better. Step two is to make them clear. What are they and what happens when they're broken? Step three is to be consistent with them. This is about establishing mutually agreed upon limits ahead of time. Think about them as a pre-plan or designing a protocol. I also want to say here, never, ever, ever set a rule that you're not 100% willing to be consistent and follow through on. Again, I like to think about this as designing a protocol or deciding things ahead of time. And the beauty of this is setting the limits ahead of time puts the power in your kids' hands, and it helps to turn on the internal compass. It also helps them develop their emotional intelligence. And remember earlier, I talked about when we punish our children, the child often feels like we're trying to control them, and it decreases the interest in cooperating. Well, when we set limits ahead of time, when we're calm and we're clear and we're consistent and we communicate the limits to them, what ends up happening is the desire to cooperate goes up because they have all the rules. They understand the bigger picture. And then on top of it, they are in control and they get the choice. If they follow the rule, then this will happen. And if they choose not to follow the rule, then that will happen. And so it really sets them up to feel calm and in control and keeps them out of fight or flight themselves. So again, I want to say limits are letting the child know up front, if then. You set the plan in place when you're being calm, and then you just follow through on the plan, which also makes it much easier for you. It keeps you out of the things we talked about in lesson 1, like fear and anger and spinning out of control and over punishing and feeling guilt and shame afterwards, because you're able to decide this pre-plan while you're calm, while you're in your higher brain, while you have yourself gathered. And then from a very calm place, when your children aren't secreting cortisol and they can hear you, you're just expressing the limits ahead of time to your children. So an example would be in our family, my son knows one of our limits are if you choose to engage in electronics or be on electronics in the morning, then there are no electronics for the rest of the day. So he is able to decide whether he wants to follow that rule or not. We have established the rule when everybody's feeling very calm. We sat down and had a conversation about this. We wrote this out on a piece of paper and taped it to his bathroom mirror and put it up on the fridge. We used language with him like if he chooses to get on electronics in the morning, then he will lose electronic privileges for the rest of the day of any kind. So we felt like the limit was reasonable and it was something we were willing to enforce 100% of the time. We made sure that he was crystal clear. We made sure that he understood and didn't have any, we had a real conversation about this. We also explained our reasoning because when he goes to school in the morning, we like for his brain to be in the best capacity to learn. I don't want his brain to have dropped a bunch of dopamine in the morning. So I really want him to be calm and in a learning state when we send him off to school. So we had a conversation around this. And then we made sure that he knew that the choice was his. So instead of saying, if you get on electronics, I'm going to punish you, we didn't use that language because that's trying to dominate over our children and manipulate them into doing it our way. We said, if you choose to get on electronics, then you will lose electronics for the rest of the day. And quite honestly, the choice was his. Now, I want to share with you that many kids are going to test you. And this is why you need to be really confident in your plan. You need to think it through and you need to be consistent. Because, of course, about 3 months later, I walked into my son's room one morning, threw on the light, and there he is laying under the covers with his iPad. So he decided to test the limits. So I walked over to him, held out my hand. He handed over the iPad. A few minutes later, he came to me and he said, Mom, I'm really mad. And I actually thought he was going to tell me he was mad at me. And I said, well, what are you mad about? He's like, well, I knew when I got the iPad this morning, I knew I was going to lose electronics for the rest of the day. He said, by the way, I do lose electronics, right? I said, what do you think? He said, yeah. He said, the rule was if I choose this in the morning, there's no electronics the rest of the day. And, it was a tough day for us. He was pretty sad and angry, but we made it through the day. And we were able to set the limit from a calm place. He knew the rules. He made the choice to violate him, and he learned the lesson. And I was able to be his emotional coach. I was able to support him through it. And I was also able to help him train his brain that he can make good choices and that he understood the consequences and that if it happens again, we're going to follow the same protocol. So it really sets him up to really be able to absorb this information and to learn the lesson I'm trying to teach rather than getting completely sidetracked with the punishment. And who knows, had I not had the limit in place ahead of time, I might have thrown on the light and, screamed something like, oh my God, I can't believe you did this. You know what? That's it. No electronics for a month, or something crazy. And then he would have tried for the next month to wear me down, and I would have been inconsistent and felt completely out of control. So let me tell you another story so you can see how setting limits works in real life. You're also, by the way, teaching your kids how to handle mistakes, solutions, and recovery when they make a mistake. Okay, so we're gonna now look at case study number 3 with Deborah. Deborah's a mom who had a child later in life who lives in a small town and is a school guidance counselor. Deborah feels stunned by her child's big emotions and bigger reactions when things aren't going his way. So last summer, we had this exchange over email when Deborah needed some of my assistance. And Deborah wrote to me one Saturday afternoon, "Hi, Lisa, this is Deborah. We're on vacation with my whole family for a wedding, and I feel like I'm a complete failure as a mom and wife." How many of us can relate to that? "My 7-year-old son is the strong-willed only child," she wrote. "There's a weird dynamic we see when we give him any, quote, freedom on vacation. He becomes obstinate and disrespectful to us. He's in my sister's wedding tonight, and at practice last night, he was talking and continued to hit the teenage boy next to him. He was fooling around and not paying attention in the middle of the practice. I got up and went over to him to talk to him and pull him aside. And as I was trying to pull him aside, he started yelling, 'No,' and pulled his arm away. He will not listen to me when he's around his cousins, and I feel it's because he's hanging around with everyone in the beach house, playing miniature golf and feeling very, quote, free, unquote." She then asked me, "How do I maintain control and help him to behave? My husband and I are at each other's throats. We fight a lot on these trips. Please give me some encouragement and guidance, Lisa." So I wrote back to her right away, and I said, "Deborah, why do you feel like a failure as a parent? Sounds like your son is exploring and getting a bit carried away with his cousins. Can you work past the failure and just see this as a growing experience for all of you? Feeling like a failure is you getting into the storm with him rather than staying on the sidelines and being his emotional coach. Sounds like he doesn't know how to handle these situations." I then went on to write to her, "Here's where we set the limit. Can you talk with him ahead of time about appropriate behavior? Can you explain in age-appropriate language how this is a special day for your sister and your entire family? Let him know that you want him to have fun and be respectful at the same time. Then let him know if he chooses to hit or do X, then Y will happen," right? So this is setting the limit. If he chooses to hit or pester his cousins or get out of control, then what will happen? So I went on to suggest to her, let him know up front. So it might be something like, if you choose to hit and get really rough with people on this special day, then we will take a walk away from people until you can gain control of yourself. Let him know up front what will happen. Invite him to regulate himself. Be specific so he knows what to work on. And then if he can't regulate himself, you step in and help him. As a parent, it works best if you stay calm and empathetic during this time." So then Deborah wrote back, "Thank you. Hope he will walk away with me if need be." Now I can see that Deborah's scared that it won't work. So I wrote to her and I said, if you tell him the plan beforehand and review it many times, he should follow. Review it within the car now a few times. Also understand and have empathy that he might be nervous, scared, excited, anxious, or all of the above about the wedding. So now you can see that I'm encouraging her to go underneath the behavior to the real feelings and needs. I then wrote to her, imagine how agitating all of this could be if you don't know how to process it, then it comes out in unacceptable ways. Because remember, this 7-year-old Colin has an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, and he's doing something that he's never done before. He's gonna stand up in a wedding. So then Deborah wrote back, just went over it all, and he did say many times that he was very nervous. She wrote, yes, I can see that now. So then I wrote to her, acknowledge that a lot and give him lots of empathy. Tell him that you understand and it will be okay. Tell him it's okay to be nervous. Ask if you can help him. Like if it feels like too much, he could come over and stand by you and hold on to your pant leg. My last tip to you, Deborah, is to release the expectation that this has to go perfectly. Your son doesn't have to perform or get it right. This will change your energy and help him relax on a subconscious level. And then I wrote, you guys look great, by the way, and enjoy yourselves. Deborah wrote, wonderful, wonderful advice and encouragement. We're talking now about his nervousness. And you're right, I need to let go of my expectations. Thank you. So, of course, I was on pins and needles all that evening, eagerly awaiting Deborah's feedback. And the next day she wrote, Lisa, thank you so very much. With all of your help and guidance, the evening went wonderfully. Thank you so much. I love you. So let me ask you, can you see all the lessons we talked about today in this particular case study, right? I mean, there was choosing not to punish and rather work through the situation. There's getting curious, not furious, and going underneath the behavior to the unmet needs. There's understanding that he was really nervous. On Saturday, there's reviewing a new plan. You know, instead of acting out with your cousin, you know, if you start to get out of hand, I'm going to come over and I'm going to walk you away from everybody, not because I'm punishing you, but I'm just going to walk you away from everybody until you can gain control of yourself, and then we'll rejoin the group. There's also just letting him know, hey, I hear you. I get that you're nervous, and that's okay. And then also letting go of the expectation that he's going to perform exactly the way you want him to. So this is why I do what I do. I love teaching, helping, supporting parents just like you here in this masterclass today to make the shift in your parenting. I love helping you shift how you see your children and how you approach guiding them and being their emotional coach. I love helping you shift how you show up, which then changes the energy of how they show up. And I love helping you rethink your interactions with your kids and bring new tools into your toolbox that really help you find deep connection and peace in your home. Let's recap all that we covered in today's masterclass. We started out by talking why mistakes are okay, how we can as parents reframe how we look at, think about, and approach the mistakes that our kids make while they're growing up. We talked about why punishments don't work, why they don't work for the child, and why they don't work for the parent. We talked about becoming your child's emotional detective. This is where we want to bring the mantra, get curious, not furious, into our parenting. It invites us to drop the judgment, and it allows us to go underneath our child's behavior to the feelings and needs, to really figure out what are they feeling and what do they need. This really helps us develop our child's emotional intelligence, and it really helps us problem solve for the long term. And finally, we talked about setting limits that peacefully stick as an alternative to punishing. When we set limits that peacefully stick, we are setting the plan in place ahead of time. We're doing it from a place of calm. We're opening the conversation with our children. We're giving them the choice. We're putting the control in their hands, and we're really allowing them to understand if then. We're allowing them to make choices, and we're allowing them to grow their emotional intelligence and really learn from the process that we put in place. So at this point, what I really want to do is I want to take a moment to ask you to write down 2 of the biggest aha moments you've had in today's masterclass. What are 2 things that you're going to take away from today's class that you really, really, really want to implement immediately within your family? Great. Now that you've written them down, I want to ask you if you would be so kind as to send an email to me at lisa@thepeacefulparent.com with your 2 aha moments. I really want to hear from you, and I really, really want to know what you're taking away from today's masterclass and what your heart desires, what you've learned from today, and what your heart desires to implement immediately into your family. And I just want to say thank you so much in advance for following through and sending me the email. It really means a lot to me. I love hearing from you, and I really want to get this email from you with the 2 things that you've learned today, the 2 aha moments that really resonated with you in today's masterclass. If you're like me And many of my clients, you've already read tons of parenting books on how to get your kids to listen and respect you. You've already listened to the advice of your friends, your mother-in-law, your sister, your mother, maybe even your husband. You've already put out that post on Facebook asking for parenting advice and input. Hashtag the struggle is real. And because you're all about trying new things and taking action, some of this advice makes sense. And sometimes you commit to implementing it and you really mean it and you're excited about it. And sometimes the advice that others give you about what they're doing or how they would do it works for about a hot second. And then the fighting, the yelling, and the battle of wills within your own family emerges yet again. And you feel like you're right back to ground zero. So the question on your mind right now is probably, Lisa, how do I actually implement a positive change in my own family when I've tried so many other things? Especially with my specific family, my specific children, and their specific needs. How do I become a success story like Robin or Tiffany or Deborah? Well, based on my own transformation, based on the work I've done with hundreds of families around the world as the certified master parent coach, I created the Peaceful Parent Academy just for you. The Peaceful Parent Academy is an 8-week program where I will show you exactly what to do and say to stop yelling, to stop punishing, and to stop butting heads with your child. I will show you exactly what to do to begin the process to peaceful parenting. This program that I've created is made up of the absolute most powerful and practical resources that I know. I created the Peaceful Parent Academy as a place for you to feel supported, for you to get guidance, and for you to be empowered to make your own changes within your family that lead you to deep connection with your kids and peace in your home. I created a program and a community to receive a powerful group experience and one-on-one attention. I created a program designed for you to go at your own pace and at the same time be held accountable by me to take action and create the exact changes that you want for your family. I created a program that's guaranteed to get results if you put in the work, just like Tiffany did, just like Deborah did, just like I did, and hundreds of other families that I've worked with. How will this change happen during our time together in the Peaceful Parent Academy? I will teach you specifically how to deal with big emotions, both yours and your child's. I will teach you ways to avoid storming with your child. I will teach you how to deal with your anger and how to stay calm during the toughest of times. I will teach you how to set limits around your family values and how to be extremely consistent with them. And I will teach you how to repair and recover after a battle with your kids. This program is packed full of tools and strategies that are designed to make an immediate impact for any parent who's feeling frustrated and tired from what feels like a never-ending battle of wills with your children. Okay, so let's talk logistics on how the Peaceful Parent Academy works. The Peaceful Parent Academy includes 8 audio classes. You will receive one at the beginning of each week that you can download and listen to whenever works for you. While driving, while walking your dog, at lunch at work, while driving home, in the evenings at home, you can listen to these audio classes anytime that works for you. You will also receive 8 workbooks designed to accompany the audio classes. And you will receive 8 live coaching calls with me. This is where you and I are going to dig in and do the work. It's where we're going to overcome your obstacles, break down the objectives. This is where the transformation will happen together. You might not think this is possible for you. to have this massive transformation in 8 live calls, doing homework and workbooks in the Peaceful Parent Academy? Well, I'm here to tell you it is possible. You might be thinking right now, hey, Lisa, I'm not sure being empathetic is going to work. I might be able to hold it together for a few minutes, but I don't think I can hold it together over the long haul. Okay, what I really want you to do right now is take a deep breath. Just take a giant, big, deep breath and think about what is possible. And while you're breathing and thinking, let me tell you that if you work together with me in the Peaceful Parent Academy, I can help you deal with your situation. I can help you with your problems. And together, as we're doing this work, we can make it work for you. You will have the family you want to have. Even if this seems almost impossible and really, really, really hard, I've done it. And if I can have this parenting transformation, so can you. This is the story of Aaron, and Aaron actually enrolled in the Peaceful Parent Academy and went through the whole experience that we're talking about right now. And Aaron wrote to me at the end of our 8 weeks together this email. Before I started training with Lisa, I felt like I was always yelling at my child. Now that I've incorporated peaceful parenting, we take the time together to work through the situation. I think what's changed most for me is my overall way of parenting that I only knew from my own childhood. Instead of just reacting to the situation now, I get curious, not furious. I engage with my child to discuss her feelings with me and to try to understand the need that isn't being met. Lisa's helped our family resolve situations and have a better connection. I'm excited to allow my girls this opportunity for openness and communication at such a young age, with the hopes and intentions that it will continue through the teen years. I'm really proud of myself for setting this time aside, for trying something new, and enrolling in the Peaceful Parent Academy. I'm proud of myself for getting my husband on board to believe the system does work, and together finding a way to be a better parent. Thanks, Aaron. Aaron is someone that I really enjoyed working with. And, it's really through the Peaceful Parent Academy that she had this massive transformation for her daughters and her husband. Can you see yourself? I just want to take a moment here and ask you to close your eyes and take a deep breath. And I want you to visualize sending me an email 8 weeks from now, telling me about the massive transformation your family's had, how proud you are of yourself because you took the time to invest in the Peaceful Parent Academy. You took the time to show up and do the work and implement the tools, and that you too are a massive success, that you're finally parenting the way you knew you could, and that your family is experiencing deep connection and peace in the home. Okay, before we get to the rest of the details about the Peaceful Parent Academy, including the price and how to grab your seat, I want to cover my 100% satisfaction guarantee. And I want your brain to relax at this point so it can make the best decision for you. And the best way I know to do that is to take the risk out of the decision for you right now. So that's why I want to cover my satisfaction guarantee. And I want to start by telling you that people who work with me one-on-one as VIP clients pay thousands of dollars to have access to this program. I wanted to make this program available to you today for a fraction of the price. And the reason is because it is my dream to help families find the same connection that I found within my family. It is my greatest desire to help you bring peace into your home and to quite honestly enjoy parenting again, and maybe even in some cases enjoy parenting for the first time ever. So I offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee because I'm so confident in the program and so sure of the change and the positive impact it's going to have on you and for your family. So my guarantee is this: if you do the work, if you attend the live coaching calls and you ask for coaching and you still aren't satisfied within the first 2 weeks of the Peaceful Parent Academy, you can ask me for a full refund and I will return your money to you No questions asked, no hassle, no surprises, just a refund. That's how confident I am in the Peaceful Parent Academy. So just to review, this program is made up of the absolute most useful, powerful, and practical resources that I've created over the last 4 years. And I'm offering it to you for a fraction of its real value. You can join the Peaceful Parent Academy today for 3 payments of $300 or 1 payment of $700. Are you ready to join? Because I sure am ready to show up and serve you and help you create that amazing transformation that you're dying to have within your family that leads to deep connection. So if you're ready, here's what you do next. I want you to go to thepeacefulparentacademy.com. Let me say that again, thepeacefulparentacademy.com, or click the button on the link on your screen, which will take you straight there. Once you get there, I want you to save your seat by registering for the next class. Space is limited, so I really want to encourage you to do this now. Once you've grabbed your seat for the next class, you get to choose your payment plan. Again, that's 3 payments of $300 or 1 payment of $700. Once you've chosen your payment plan and filled in all the details, you will receive a welcome email from me with all the class details and all the information that you need to get started. Let me say this again. This program is packed full of tools and strategies that are designed to make an immediate impact for any parent who's feeling frustrated and tired from what feels like a never-ending battle of wills with your child. Let me also remind you of the risk-free guarantee. If you do the work, attend the live calls, ask for coaching, and still aren't satisfied within the first 2 weeks, you can request a full refund. No questions asked for me, no hassle, no surprises. You will receive a refund. Remember, I said at the beginning of the masterclass that if you stay till the end, I have an amazing bonus for you. And here you are. So let me share my amazing bonus with you. If you purchase your seat in the Peaceful Parent Academy before we end this masterclass, you will receive a VIP 60-minute private coaching session with me. That's just you and me together for 1 hour, focused on you, your family, your parenting struggles, and your goals. We will create an action plan together to put you on the path to peace in your home and deep connection with your kids. I'm so excited to offer this bonus, and I cannot wait to get on the phone and have this coaching session with you. Now, sometimes you can't make that decision while we're here on this masterclass, and I totally understand that. So I also want to offer a second bonus. If you join the Peaceful Parent Academy and grab your seat within the next 24 hours, I will send you access to my parent coaching library. This is 6 hours of recorded coaching on the most common challenges parents face, so that you can immediately begin shifting your relationship with your child towards deep connection and peace in the home. These recordings are chock full of tips and ideas and support, and you'll hear me provide coaching with other clients who have situations similar to yours. You'll be able to download these recordings, listen to them in the car, listen to them while you're walking, while you're folding laundry, anytime that works for you, and they will have an immediate impact on your family and the tools that you can bring into the home. All righty, we have covered a lot of ground here today, and I am so excited for you that you got these tips, that you got these tools, and that you were able to come and really absorb this information. Again, I can't wait to get that email from you with your aha moments or the things you plan to implement in your family immediately. And I really hope that you're feeling hopeful, that whatever way it is in your home right now, the yelling, the punishment, the frustration, whatever's going on, you walk away today knowing that that's not how it has to be. My wish for you is simple. May you have deep connection with your child or your children, and peace in your home. And if there is ever anything I can do to help you make it happen, it would honestly be my honor and privilege. And you know where to find me. And hey, if you're ready to start now, click on the link and get yourself registered for the Peaceful Parent Academy. I really and truly cannot wait to start working with you. Okay, that's it for today. I'm wishing you all peaceful parenting, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.